Hey everyone, today we're here to talk about the assignment we did for common sense, and I'm going to give you some formative feedback. So once again, we're on key concept 3.2, and the historical skill that we will be focusing on today is the appropriate use of relevant historical evidence. Okay, so let's read that real quick and let's kind of focus on that skill. Historical thinking involves the ability to identify, describe, and evaluate evidence about the past from diverse sources. Okay, with respect to content, authorship, purpose, format, and audience. Historical thinking involves the ability to extract useful information, make supportable inferences, and draw appropriate conclusions from historical evidence. Historical thinking involves the ability to understand such evidence in its context, recognize its limitations, and assess the points of view. So, let's take a look here at common sense. And once again, I didn't have you guys read the whole thing because that would have taken a really long time. And when we did this in class, we also wanted to focus a little bit on our skills in rhetorical analysis that you're being taught in AP English. Okay, so I'm not gonna really talk about the rhetorical strategies here. But what I'm gonna focus on are the kind of the arguments that are being used by or the claims that are being put forth by Paine. Okay, so let's real quickly kind of look through here, and basically I'm going to give you kind of an idea of what you should have pulled from these excerpts. Okay, so the first excerpt is one of my favorite ones, but it's basically suggesting that because he's kind of putting forth the argument of just because that we've flourished under the British doesn't mean we can't flourish without Great Britain. And kind of the argument that he uses here, the analogy that he uses, and it's a pretty good analogy. Right here, he brings up the great point that we may as well assert that because a child has thrived upon milk of the mother, that that they have to be kind of on that for their entire life, which would be kind of weird. I think we all agree. And so Thomas Paine is kind of pointing out that yeah, we might have grown under British rule, but that doesn't mean that we need to stay under British rule. He's basically kind of suggesting that at some point everyone has to grow up, and America needs to grow up. And so he's basically suggesting that under British rule, we're kind of being stuck in this kind of permanent adolescent stage of development. Okay, politically, socially, economically, these are all things that are kind of hindering us, especially economically. If you think about it, the Americans weren't really allowed to develop economically. They basically were, we basically just built raw materials. Okay, we sent raw materials over to the British, and they sent back finished goods. Now we did have limited industry. We did a little bit of shipbuilding, but for the most part, there really wasn't much industry going on in America, and so that was something that the colonists resented. And Thomas Paine brings a pretty good point here. All right, second excerpt. Right here is basically he's saying that the British don't really care about us. The British basically care about themselves. The British care about enriching themselves. Okay, so if their actions benefit us, it's just kind of a coincidence because all the actions that they commit are basically to enriching the mother country. Okay, so that's one of his point there from the second excerpt. The third excerpt, excuse me, Thomas Paine brings up this idea that America's future is in neutrality, okay, and commerce with the rest of the world. And he's saying that by doing that, America will thrive. There's no point for us to get involved in all these European wars that are destructive and they don't serve any purpose. That Americans just need to kind of mind their own business. And if we do that, we won't make any enemies, and countries will trade with us, and we'll become wealthy and prosperous. And that should be our goal there. Okay. And obviously, being part of the British Empire doesn't allow us to do that, and that kind of pulls us into these conflicts. Okay. Kind of the fifth excerpt here I wanted to look at real quick. Here he brings up the point that Europe has too many kingdoms, and as a result, they have a hard time, staying at peace. And so once again, he's using this as as a reason to, be independent. And once again, that if we're neutral, things will kind of go our way. Okay. Next one, excerpt 6. I think this has to be my favorite. He basically throws down on anyone who thinks that we should reconcile with the British. Um, he brings up all these things. He says, "But if you say you can still pass the violations over, then I ask, how has your house been hurt? Your house been burnt, excuse me. Hath your property been destroyed before your face? Are your wife and children destitute on a bed they lie on? Do they have bread to live on? Have you lost a parent? Have you lost a child?" Okay? And then the last sentence is fantastic. "But if you have, and you can still shake the hands with these murderers, then you are unworthy the name of husband, father, friend, or lover, and whatever may be your rank or title in life, you have the heart of a coward and the spirit of a sycophant." Um, so, pretty strong words from Thomas Paine here, suggesting that how could you possibly reconcile with these people after all the things they've done to the colonies? Um, at some point, there's no turning back, there's no saving a relationship, and Thomas Paine is kind of making the argument that, that we've reached this point, there's no going back anymore. The British have, done too many offensive things to the colonies, and it's time to basically break away. And if you don't see it that way, you're a coward, is essentially what he's saying. Um, and then the last 2 points. The 7 is a great kind of common sense kind of argument. Thomas Paine brings up the point: how is it possible that a small island can rule a continent? He's basically saying that's absurd. And if you just look at America, that clearly it's obvious that we are going to grow, we are going to become wealthy, we are going to become more populous than the British. So the fact that they are going to rule us is kind of, like I said, absurd. And then the 8th excerpt is just kind of the way Thomas Paine ends Common Sense, and I just kind of love it because it's very, very idealistic, and you can kind of feel his emotions through his words here. So let's read it together. "O ye that love mankind, ye that dare oppose not only the tyranny but the tyrant, stand forth. Every spot of the old world is overrun with oppression. Freedom hath been hunted round the globe. Asia and Africa have long expelled her. Europe regards her like a stranger, and England hath given her warning to depart. Oh, receive the fugitive, and prepare in time an asylum for mankind." So this is just a great line. It really kind of shows what these patriots were thinking at the time. They're basically looking at the whole world, and they see a world of tyranny. They see a world of oppression. They see a world where people don't have any rights, and they look at themselves and they see the 13 colonies, and they really see it as kind of the hope for humanity, the hope for liberty, um, and it pretty much all rests on them. Okay, that if they fail, liberty will be defeated, but if they succeed, maybe they can shine light into this dark, dark world. So a very idealistic kind of conclusion for Thomas Paine. And here we can see once again, just 7 or 8 examples here of the arguments that he puts forth in his pamphlet Common Sense. And once again, it's immensely popular. Most people have either read it or heard of it at this time. When I say most people, I'm obviously talking about pretty much white dudes. Um, you know, women and Native Americans and Africans really aren't involved in this discussion. But the white men at the time were very much influenced by this document, whether they loved it or hated it, and it has a strong role in convincing Americans that maybe it's time for the United States of America to become the United States of America and break away from the British. So, anyways, guys, hopefully this helped if you had any confusion on Common Sense or just needed kind of a refresher on what was common sense, what are the arguments put forth, and how did it contribute to America moving towards independence. All right, have a nice day, everyone. Thank you.